Shawn Wells, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Jimmy. I'm excited to be on.
Dude, I've been observing you from afar for a long time, and we recently connected. I'm like, dude, let's come on for a podcast. We got to get you on. Guys, he is ingredientologist over on Instagram. Go find him, and it says here you are an ingredient scientist, biochemist, dietitian, and formulator. Lost over 100 pounds. Beat depression, overcame a brain tumor, transformed health with food and supplements. You sound like a nerd, man.
I am. I'm a big time dork, Jimmy.
Absolutely. Like if you're in this space for even a moment and you're making a difference, you kind of have to be a little bit nerdy because there's some nerdy things to talk about.
100%. I'm ready to go full nerd. If you want to go all the way there, let's go.
Oh, we will. And I think we could do it in layman language so that people that aren't nerdy go, they're going to be dumbfounded. But why don't we start with your story? Because 100 pounds lost, overcoming depression, brain tumor. Tell us your story.
It started out with me being in a chaotic home and me being bullied as a kid, and I was very overweight, like morbidly obese, and people, laughed at me. I was last picked on the team, kind of like the some movie that you'd watch or something. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So, from that standpoint, that kind of started the trend where it was just difficult to love myself, growing up, and I was very depressed. I took a lot of that stuff hard. I learned to survive by being a comedian of sorts, just the funny guy. And I think you know how that is too, Jimmy, right?
Mechanism for that trauma. Like people that are funny, like everybody loves comedians. I loved Robin Williams.
Yeah,
but
me too.
He has some major mental health stuff. They never really got into how he got there, but it probably was triggered by some childhood trauma, just like you and I have both dealt with.
Yeah. And so one of the ways to get love beyond just comedy immediately was achievement for me. I pushed hard. I tried hard in school. Like I wanted to show everyone how talented I was. It wasn't going to be on a basketball court, or a football field. It was going to be with grades or with creative projects. So that became my angle. I got into a really good business school, Babson College, and then it was about halfway through that I started working out, and creatine had come out from EAS. It was phosphagen. I started taking the protein, reading the GNC bodybuilding magazines, and hanging out in GNC for hours, just looking at labels. And I became somewhat of an expert, on supplements. And people would ask me about supplements all the time, and I started transforming my body because I was in the gym quite a bit. I was taking all the supplements. I changed up my diet, and I went to this doctor in between my sophomore and junior year for my physical, and I was telling him about supplements and how cool it is, and wanted to know what he thought. And of course, I thought he'd laugh and think it was stupid, but instead, he drew out a lifeline for me and said, why not be happy between here and here? And I was like, did this guy just give me permission to chase my dream?
Yeah.
Because no one else had. Everyone else in my friends and family are like, go get a real job, just finish up your degree, you got business, start making money. But this guy was like, go pursue your passion. And I can hear the passion in your voice. And it's now part of your story. And I was like, damn. It. And because it was a doctor, I was like taking this, if some hippie guy was like, hey, bro, just chase your dreams, man. I would have been like, yeah, okay, man. But because it was this guy, I was like, okay, let's do this. And so I decided to go back to school after I finished up to get all the prereqs I needed to get into UNC Chapel Hill, my dream school for nutrition. And the opposite thing happened to me. I went to a guidance counselor, and he I told him everything I wanted to do. He said, that's 26 credit hours a semester of pure sciences. You're a business student. You will fail, and you will fail miserably, and you're not even in good shape.
Oh.
And and I left his office crying, angry, and then that night I almost killed myself
Wow.
with pills and liquor because for 2 years I had this dream in my head, and this guy pretty much was, taking it away from me. And you know what? I don't know if I can swear on this show, but
Where go?
okay, as I was like that night, I'm like, it was like right on the edge of I'm either gonna kill myself with these pills and the liquor, or I said, fuck it. Like, fuck this guy. I am going to do what I set out to do. It strengthened my resolve. And it's not the healthiest thing, but Jimmy, like, hate fueled me for 2 years.
Yeah.
Hate. Like, I thought of that guy every single day. And I went to class, I got straight A's, and I heard his voice. People would say, "You want to go out and drink?" And I was like, "Nope. I want to like destroy this guy. I want to make him feel stupid because I know it wasn't just me. He took away a lot of dreams."
Okay, I want to talk about this a little bit because what happened with that guidance counselor who tried to dash your dreams, he was the face and the name of the trauma that was already there from your
Yeah.
childhood. And
Yeah.
I've this even in my own self, Shawn, that a lot of times I put the name and face of mine as my dad, but I had a lot of stuff that was my trauma as well. And so it's funny how we use those things to like motivate ourselves. Now, some people, they go the other direction and they do kill themselves. Some people say, well, oh, and they get so down that they kind of like wallow in their pity for the rest of their lives. So when you've been through stuff, and you hear somebody say some kind of bullshit like that to you, it's people that rise above that that go on to do great things.
Oh, it fueled me. And it took me a while to actually find peace in my heart, but I ended up getting into Chapel Hill, my dream school, so that worked out. And I decided to pursue a path on nutritional biochemistry, like I said, and also my game plan was to become a registered dietitian, like a chief clinical dietitian, like
Yeah.
a pretty high level one. But my true dream was to become a supplement formulator. But there's not like tons of those out there. There's not like want ads. Hey, we want a supplement formulator at this massive company. Come on. So the plan was to become an RD, and in the background, I would just start working on message boards for supplement companies. I would, answering questions for like customers, doing marketing write-ups, helping with some formulations, but obviously not getting paid for it, not getting a whole lot of credit for it. I would go to like the Arnold and the Olympia and set up booths and, you know, just have like, I don't even know, 20-hour days. Just like I used up all my vacations. Just this is down the road after I finished my master's, but literally every single day, every single night was spent doing that. But during my master's, because I was pushing so hard again, and like you said, I've been through so much trauma. I think my body just literally started breaking down, and it was nasty. It was really nasty. Autoimmune stuff just hit me like a train. And I got Epstein-Barr, Hashimoto's, chronic fatigue, strep throat, fibromyalgia. Like I couldn't even get out of bed. And again, I was considering killing myself because I had worked so hard on all these dreams, and I was about 6 months away from finishing my master's, and I couldn't get out of bed. Like I was just in such horrible pain, brain fog. Like I, I couldn't move. Like I felt like someone who's crippled and almost quadriplegic. Like just, I was like, I can't live like this. This isn't a real life anymore. I can't hold a job like this. And it was this crazy diet that was actually kind of big back then in the form of Atkins and all that stuff. And I had already done that before, got some good weight loss, but I was reading more on the ketogenic diet, and some people were seeing good benefits with autoimmune stuff
Yeah.
on these message boards I was on, which was a thing back then. I don't know, maybe people know Reddit now, but I was on message boards, and then I read a couple books too. I was reading at the time Dan Duchesne's Body Opus, which was for bodybuilders, about using the ketogenic diet for to get ready for the stage instead of just eating broccoli and steamed fish or whatever. And then there was a book by Lyle McDonald called The Ketogenic Diet for the Practitioner. And I was reading those, and I was on these boards, and I decided to try it and go very strict keto. And lo and behold, like all of it lifted from me. I got my life back. I became a keto evangelist, and it really changed my life. And I was able to finish up my degree. And of course, everyone in my program thought keto is stupid if they'd even heard of it. Most people had just heard of like these low carb diets.
Right.
And it just changed my life. And that was a big one. And then, but I'll tell you, like, it was hard 20 years ago because I was like on and off because, I'd be out with friends and, it just, there wasn't the support network. There wasn't the recipes. There wasn't keto treats and ice cream. There wasn't all the stuff.
We didn't even have like the sophistication of the sweeteners and things like that.
Right.
Devices like I've got a really nerdy little breath ketone device now. This didn't even exist like a year ago.
Right. 100%.
Changing.
100%. The only thing I had was the strips.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was on and off it. Like every time I started feeling bad, I'd go back to it. But it was part of my lifestyle. And then about 8 years ago, I got a pituitary tumor. And that's when I'm like, okay, everything is going to be strict from here. Like it's going to be paleo, intermittent fasting, keto, all the things I know how to do, biohacking, and I'm just going to try and walk the path from here. And that's when, now there's, like you said, there's a lot more stuff. There's these devices, there's treats, everything is more, yeah, Aura rings, yeah, exactly. I use BioStrap, same thing, and everything's more combined now too. Like I actually saw the term the Paleolithic ketogenic diet, PKD. And like I'm like, okay, like so things are like actually crossing over, which is cool. And a lot of people are doing intermittent fasting in our groups or extended fasting. And so now it's getting much, much easier to do all this. And I've kept my pituitary tumor at bay, but yeah, it's been a health journey for sure. Uh, but one I've loved, and I became a formulator about 10 years out of school officially. So about 10 years ago, I became a paid full-time formulator. I worked with Dymatize, BioTrust, helped both of those companies go to sale, and now I just do it for myself. And I patent novel ingredients. That's the biggest thing I do now. That's really, really fun is patent novel ingredients.
So you bring in things like adaptogens and some other kind of things that aren't in the normal formulations of a lot of supplements. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Breakthrough ingredients, do studies on them, get patents on them, trademarks, the whole thing. Like I work with a team of a couple German scientists and a Chinese manufacturer that's brilliant, and we just make ingredients.
I'm seeing things like lion's mane and ashwagandha showing up in all kinds of things now, whereas even 5 years ago, those things nobody even knew what they were.
Yeah, those are great ingredients. I love the adaptogens so much. Really like lion's mane for BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, like which helps with neuroplasticity and taking on new tasks. Yeah, and the adaptogens, I love ashwagandha and rhodiola just for that. Like it helps with the stress response. Like right now is a perfect time because people are overstressed and what's called your allostatic load, your stress bucket, if
Yeah.
you will, you can make your stress bucket larger by taking things like adaptogens that help you adapt to stress. But you can also do it with doing cold plunges and hot saunas and, meditation and gratitude and all these different things that help with your bucket to get bigger.
Yeah, and red light therapy is what I was
Yep.
saying. You
Yep.
like light, and so I'm curious to ask the ingredientologist, which, by the way,
Sure.
that's a really cool name you came up with. What is one, I guess, element in the diet of a keto, paleo, real food person that they should be adding in that they're not currently doing?
An ingredient? Which one? My favorite one.
Is
Yeah,
there is there a supplement? Go.
my favorite one, Jimmy, is berberine slash dihydroberberine. It's a glucose disposal agent. Anyone who is, borderline diabetic, or just knows what metabolic disease is, knows that, metformin, one, is powerful at reducing that glucose that's in the system and improving something called AMP-K. But it also helps with just longevity. We're seeing, like, there's studies that project like 2 to 2.5 years longer life. There's nothing that does something like you may be like 2 years, that's it. Like, that's a long time. That's a huge impact. There's nothing like that. And so berberine is kind of the herbal equivalent of metformin, and there's nothing that's quite as powerful as berberine. Berberine head to head has been shown to be better than metformin. The one
Well,
I patented, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, it's less side effects than
Yeah, exactly.
don't have the buffer
Exactly.
on the metformin. It can really cause gastric distress, whereas berberine has never done that.
Exactly. So, yeah, and metformin was actually just recalled from being tainted, and
Yeah.
it does lower B12 levels as well. So, there's some issues with metformin, but yeah, berberine head to head was shown to be superior. But dihydroberberine, the one I patented, is about 5 times more active. So at the gut, berberine converts into dihydroberberine and then converts back into berberine in the plasma. So it just skips that step of trying to convert at the gut. And so for that reason, you can take much, much smaller doses. But either way, I think, people should take berberine or dihydroberberine. It's probably my top one because if we're to look at, I'm a big mitochondrial health person, and if we're to look at biological aging versus chronological aging, and we're to look at almost all disease states that just aren't genetic, they're all like metabolically related. And so, as there's mitochondrial dysfunction, you run into insufficient cellular energy states. Makes sense. The
Yep.
mitochondria makes energy, ATP. But these insufficient cellular energy states, it's kind of like trying to run your Ferrari on like diesel or something. Like, this thing's like, it's a beautiful car, it's made for high speeds, but it's kind of chugging down the road, and all kinds of issues happen: glycation, blood sugar damage, inflammation, and oxidation, which is, like rust essentially. And your body is damaging itself and aging itself faster biologically than your chronological age. So I love looking at glycation, inflammation, oxidation, trying to figure out ways to reduce those and improve mitochondrial health at the same time. So most of my research revolves around those things because they not only reduce your aging, but they reduce almost all disease states. They make you healthier and leaner. They make you happier. They make you feel more energetic. And a lot of people are looking at the wrong things or small things, or not saying these other supplements that you could potentially take aren't great. I take a lot of them, but that's just a massive, like, lock and key right there, is taking something like berberine. So that's a big one for me.
Oh, I've been on Berberine for about a decade is when it came
Yeah.
on came on my radar screen. I created a company that sells one. What's the name of the one that you created that's got the precursor?
It's dihydroberberine is the actual name, but it's Glucovantage is the brand name.
Glucovantage. Okay. And so 87% of the population have some level of insulin resistance. It's a no-brainer, especially for people with type 2 diabetes. If you're willing to take metformin, take berberine, take a good quality berberine. And of course, not just the glucose and the insulin stabilizing effects and trying to make you more insulin sensitive, which helps with all those down regulation things you were just talking about, but it also has a little bit of a lipid manipulation as well. There's all kinds of like good things that happen that I don't think when people
Yeah.
take a they're saying, I'm taking this to lower my glucose. Well, that's not all it's going to do, because there's so many like cascades of things that happen when you change things in your body.
Exactly. Yep, you're right. Exactly right. The inflammation, dyslipidemia, like a lot of those things are improved with berberine in the studies. There's even data on it affecting serotonin and dopamine, which is no surprise either. Like, when we're happy, when we're functioning optimally, those improve too. And I feel like, it's why when we're battling our weights, or and blood sugar's higher, that we have a tendency to be more impulsive. I mean, because we feel those blood glucose fluctuations more. We want to reach for the things that make us happy because we're feeling low. And unfortunately, like, we're surrounded by addiction like never before. Companies are in the business of addiction. You walk in a convenience store, Jimmy, and it's like you're surrounded by addiction, right? It's alcohol, porn, sugar, caffeine, lottery, and it's like all colorful, and all these colored liquids in the cases and colored packages for candies by the register, and you are a tough fucking bastard if you can get out of there without grabbing something, because it's like an assault on your senses.
Yeah.
And you're strong. You have to be strong to go in a gas station and make it out.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people, they know that there are formulations of these things like Doritos and Coca-Cola and all these things. They don't think about the food scientist, now, which you are one. You're an ingredient scientist. And so these food scientists, they design these things. What was it? Sugar, Salt, Fat was the book a few years
Yeah.
back we're talking about. They purposely look for that bliss point, so that when you eat one, the whole bet you can't eat just one with Lay's, they were right. They were trying to make it where you couldn't just eat just one. And that's the part of this equation of looking at those kinds of things as food. I call them food-like disease agents, crappy garbage. I have all kinds of names for them. But people think that's food, and then you start talking about real food, and it's such a foreign concept to them.
You're dead on. I was going to talk about Bliss Point Foods. I mean, that's exactly it. These engineers are spending their whole day on making something more Bliss Point. So think about, you brought up a great point with the salt, sweet, fat kind of thing, is that, think about, if I was to give you some raw almonds, how many would you eat? And then if I was to give you, I'll roast them. It brings out a little sweetness, a little flavorful note. You eat a little bit more. Let me put some oil on them. Let me put some salt on them. Let me add a honey flavor. Let me add habanero, honey habanero. And now all of a sudden you're eating the whole bag.
Why is my
Yeah.
mouth watering now? My mouth.
You're eating the whole bag, and that's the whole bliss point idea. It's like all these people, they know. I mean, that's why bacon, which is okay for us on keto, but it's salty, it's crunchy, it's chewy, it's got like multiple textures and many things going on, and then people add like maple syrup to it, and on and on and on, and then it's hitting all these different palettes. Foods typically from nature have one or two. They don't have four or five like bliss point factors. So, that's part of the problem, is Like they're just engineering these things so that you get your dopamine serotonin explosion, literally like a foodgasm, right? And then there you go, like overeating, it's overriding satiety, overriding your fullness. And so that's a problem. Here's another example, Jimmy, of actually what they do with some of these drinks. And this is pretty insidious, is that they will, I mean, first off, they've worked on that, like when you open the bottle, right? So like that's like it starts the psychosomatic responses and the salivary responses, but then they put flavor up front in these drinks, but not in the back. So that when you drink it, and you've seen people do this, like they sit there, they drink it, it's really good. They put it down, they put the lid on, they take the lid off, they drink it, they put it down, and they keep going through this process over and over and over, and they don't even realize like how addicted they look. Like they can't just take a swig and, put it away for 5 minutes. Is what happens is they're like, whoa, that was really good. I want some more because the back was so empty. I can't remember how it tasted, but I remember it was really good. So I'm going to have some more. Oh, that's the taste I like. Oh, the taste is gone. I want more. It's it's really insidious. And we don't get told this. We don't get told that we're getting manipulated to this degree. And like you said, I mean, even these slogans, once you pop, you can't stop, or I bet you can't eat just one, or all this stuff. Like, I mean,
Even
they're literally putting it in your face.
even da 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 da.
Yeah, I'm loving it, right?
Brand is everybody knows that.
Exactly, exactly. So it's tough, and that's why I think it's really good to go. It doesn't need to be labeled paleo, but whole food, whatever that looks like for you, try and go as whole food as possible. Because if you look now, here's the worst combination. And the whole reason that we went down this path of high fat foods being bad for you, there's all these animal studies where they give them high fructose corn syrup or maltodextrin, and they give them pro-inflammatory processed vegetable oils, and then they say high fat diets kill you, they're bad for you. Well, this is essentially the McDonald's diet that we put them on. So, of course, that's not healthy to give them rancid processed fats and then these ultra high glycemic processed sugars and combine that and say high fat is bad. So, they're obviously not getting into ketosis. They're nowhere near that. And what happens is you're getting that insulin spike, and instead of being in like a lipolytic state, like where you're going to be breaking down fat, you're in like an adipogenic state, like where you're creating fat and storing fat. And so that's the worst combination. And literally, Jimmy, there's no place in nature that high glycemic carbohydrate and high fat exists. There's only one that I know of, and it's the bear eats tons of berries and eats high fat fish.
Right.
And guess what it does? It puts on tons of weight
Right.
for hibernation for the winter. And that's the only animal that I can think that does that with its diet, and look at the results. So like I don't even think sugar or carbs are as insidious as or as nefarious as like the combination of high fat, high carb.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I often tell people, they're like, well, I want to eat a little more carbs. I say, cut down on the fat when you do that. And they're
Yeah.
like, what? I'm like, no, you got to think about it. It's that combo of fat and carbs that's like horrible. So families go, or a woman in the family goes keto. She starts making these high fat meals for her family, but then they're eating the junk along with the high fat. And I'm like, you probably need to make sure they don't do that. But you don't
Right.
up for disaster to 10 years down the line having to go on keto themselves.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point that I usually think about the individual, but in a family setting, yeah, you could be setting them up for pretty bad metabolic disaster if they're eating your keto stuff, but then adding sweets to it, and yeah,
Happens.
that would be bad.
So you mentioned nutritional health studies. I loathe nutritional health studies because you really can't accurately isolate one ingredient. Like you were mentioning, they called it a high fat diet when it was vegetable oils and high glycemic carbs. You're not really isolating it. Like they always want to talk about red meat studies. Red meat leads to all cause mortality, cancer, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, did they eat just red meat? And if they ate just red meat, did you parse out grass fed versus grain fed? Like, no, they never do that parsing out. And yet, all the headlines of studies show high fat, high meat diet causes XYZ. And I'm going, okay, let's put people in a metabolic ward like Stefansson did for a whole year just eating animal foods. Okay, now we're talking. Now we can actually get good data. Why doesn't that data exist?
Well, to your point, I think the data exists for millions of years of carnivores and herbivores. They have never gotten sick. They've always been healthy. The only thing that has changed that's gotten us sick all of a sudden is ultra processed food and these food engineers. That's it. Like no one eating whole food, whether you're vegan or carnivore or omnivore, anything in between, like, Mediterranean's kind of in between, but we're seeing people that are carnivore, like have all kinds of benefits. We're seeing people that are espousing vegan, which I'm not necessarily a fan of personally, but I think if well constructed, you could be healthy vegan. So it's what it is the stuff in between. You can eat shitty on any diet. You could be vegan and have lollipops and Coca-Cola. You can be a carnivore and eat spam and, whatever. I mean, it's like you said, is it well constructed? Are you eating whole foods as they would be found in nature? So it's never been red meat. It's like you're saying, does it have where they grain fed, they have antibiotics, steroids, where they tortured and not treated well, all the things that like don't represent whatever nature would have represented
Yeah.
is bastardized. This isn't real food anymore. It's engineered food, it's processed food, and they literally call it ultra processed now because it's gone to a different level where it's so manipulated.
Yeah, and we see people like over in the UK, like Dr. Asim Malhotra, a cardiologist, kind of speaking out very prominently about ultra processed foods, and he actually has the attention of the main guy there. So Boris Johnson is his name, I believe, and trying to get his attention to put the focus on this. And I saw another story, Shawn, in Mexico where they're going after like food advertisers on television targeting children. Like I see good things happening, not in America, everywhere around the world. Like what's going to break the monopoly that is the food empire?
I sometimes it does feel overwhelming like that, and I get a little down as well. But I was in this clinic yesterday that's doing like biological dentistry, that's doing peptides, that's doing stem cells and all this stuff, and they were walking me around it, and I've had some experience with some other clinics like this, and they were showing me all the things, and I was thinking like there may be resistance from mainstream healthcare, allopathic healthcare, but man, there's some pressure coming from the other direction. And people are wising up and people are seeing results. People are seeing results. It's like keto. It's like all these people like keto's bullshit. Like keto, what does it fix everything? And then people are like, yeah, it kind of fixes everything. And one of the reasons it fixes everything is because it's not just a diet, it's a fuel source. And that makes it so different than any other diet. I mean, we're meant to be dual fuel, glucose and ketones. And for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we were dual fuel up until the advent of ultra processed food. And now people are monofuel, like only having glucose because they're eating 6 times a day, they're having snacks, they're eating high glycemic carbohydrates, they don't have resistant starch, they don't have the fiber, they're not as active anymore, they're not going a day or two without eating at times. That used to be called starving, now it's called fasting. They're not expending as much energy to try and find food. I mean, food is delivered to your door with DoorDash and vending machines and whatever, and
Order.
it's just, yeah, it's just so different now. I mean, if you compare it to then, like we would have been in ketosis probably about 50% of the time. We were metabolically flexible. Now we're metabolically inflexible. And so, going back to your point, I feel like there's, a lot of pressure coming back on traditional medicine in all forms because people are like they're band they're crossing their arms, they're banding together, they're like, this is bullshit because we're getting results, you're telling me no, but I'm 100 pounds less, all my labs are better, I feel better, so what the hell? Like, I'm going to a different doctor because you're an idiot. And people are feeling that way, and I'm not saying doctors are idiots because there's a lot of phenomenal doctors I've worked with out there, and a lot of doctors that are like doing the same thing. A lot of doctors are on keto that I meet, or that are eating paleo, or that are doing peptides, or talking about biological dentistry, or like some of these other things, or like you said, like red light therapy, or all these different things. They're like, hey, this stuff works. Like, there's science behind it. My patients are getting results. I'm adding it in. So I think things are changing because people are seeing the differences, and we're tired of the same old, same old.
And they were seeing the differences for 2020, but something really incredible in 2020 has happened. Those exact same people who dismissed keto as some quackery, whatever, they're now telling us wear a mask, socially distance, stay at home, wash your hands, but not a damn thing about eat real food, get fresh air, get movement in, get proper vitamin supplementation, things like D and zinc. They're not telling us any of those things. And so we already had a distrust for them because they dismissed keto. Now those same entities are like, trust us. We know what we're talking about. No, you've already proven you don't know what the bleep you're talking about.
And again, like I was saying about being nefarious or insidious, it almost feels that way because it's literally some of the exact opposite things. Like, the worst thing you can do for your microbiome is sterilize it.
Right.
You're killing, one, good bacteria, but two, we're supposed to get pathogens to make us stronger. Going back to that allopathic load, or allostatic load, sorry, it really is an allopathic load right now with the doctors and the way they're doing us. But
Right.
the allopathic allostatic load, the stress bucket getting bigger, like when we're exposing ourselves to pathogens, we get stronger. We become harder to kill. We're more bioresilient. And that's the key term. And when we're inside, not getting our vitamin D, when we're inside, not getting exposed to other people and their microbiomes, and not talking to people and having the therapy and connection, and feeling isolated and lonely, and then the clickbait of what's on our phones, our computers, and on our TVs with fear. Fear is lowering our immune system 50%. And we've seen that vitamin D is like 98% correlation, Jimmy. Like, so when you're deficient in vitamin D, you cannot fight off infections well, especially respiratory infections.
Right.
But when you're sufficient and having ample vitamin D, your chances of, if you get this, dying are like less than 1%.
Right.
So what is going on? Like you're saying, like, we should be saying, get outside, get fresh air, do grounding, do that sunbathing, sun gazing, get the vitamin D, take some additional D3, zinc, mushrooms, vitamin C. Oh, IV vitamin C? Hell yeah, do that. That'll knock this thing out in 2 seconds. Don't have to wait for the vaccine. I mean, I don't want to get too controversial, but you take like that cancer dose of 30 to 50 grams of vitamin C, that thing's dead and gone.
And see, that's the thing. Like I saw an interview that Dr. Fauci did recently with Jennifer Garner on Instagram Live, and he admitted, "Oh, I take vitamin C and vitamin D daily, and I don't have a problem with anybody taking it." And I'm going, why haven't you said that from the podium when you start talking about preventative measures? That's the whole thing, Shawn. This whole year has been just one big dystopian nightmare of a movie. It's like, if you want to know how to handle a pandemic the wrong way, they're showing you the blueprint.
So I know some doctors that have had 20 different patients with severe COVID. I won't say which one that came to their office, and they've been using HCQ, which we heard about early on. They used probiotics. They've to help with the microbiome. They've used vitamin D3, like high levels, sometimes injections if needed. The zinc, and like I said, like mushrooms, things like AHCC, which are really potent for the immune system. If you never looked at that, like it's crazy powerful for the immune system. But all mushrooms are impressive. And then there's actually like an amino acid that's in mushrooms called ergothioneine that's really impressive with the immune system. But they're using all these different things. And again, IV vitamin C, and maybe even something like NAD to help with mitochondrial health. And she said every time, like the person's like well within days, like just gone from death's door to well. But you know what? How much does vitamin C cost? How much does even HCQ cost? Which is, oh, that drug sucks. You want to know why it sucks?
$4.
Because it's pennies. Yeah, like all these things are pennies that we're talking about when you add them up. But that vaccine, 60% of the country is ready to take it as soon as it's available. Some of us that travel a ton internationally, like me, they're talking about maybe we'd have to take it to even go internationally. And so, like if you look at the numbers, let's say we're talking 60% worldwide or in our country. I mean, you're talking about billions of people. In our country, that would be maybe like 200 million people. But you multiply that through on those dollars, and that's a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And do we know anything about this vaccine? Do we know if it has, mercury or any issues, or, whether you're pro-vax, anti-vax? I don't necessarily want to be the first guy up to say, stick that in me.
Well, and especially with what even like the Moderna vaccines, one of the forerunners here, we won't even talk about AstraZeneca having major problems in phase 3 of their trial, but Moderna vaccine alone, I mean, this is their first vaccine ever. And usually vaccines take at least 3 years, at least 3 years. And this was being rushed in about 6 to 8 months. And it's like, okay, yeah, I don't want to be the guinea pig either, but I also trust my immune system. I trust my T cells, and I trust that I'm taking a prophylactic dose of vitamin D. I've been doing it, by the way, since we were locked down in March. I did a really high dose early on, something like 25 to 30,000 a day, just to kind of get it up in my system. Now, since it's been sunny outside, I backed it down to 10, and I stand out and I get all the sun. But it's amazing to me. Yes, it's this grand push for a vaccine when this thing might disappear, Shawn, before a vaccine is even needed. Is that why they're rushing it?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. Yeah, exactly. I think herd immunity is definitely going to take place. The biggest thing you have to worry about is this is there going to be some kind of adaptation or evolution of this and multiple strains, but certainly herd immunity does take place, and I think you're seeing it. But obviously politics plays a role in this. The rush, November is a big reason to rush this, to say who has it and who doesn't, and I'm taking care of you, don't worry about a thing. But for sure, like there's so many, it's so frustrating, like being outside, connecting with people, playing sports, reducing stress, getting that vitamin D, getting the fresh air, grounding, like getting the geomagnetic force from the ground that kind of aligns your electrical field. We are a body electric. And I don't know if you know, like with the mitochondria, like there's the whole like electron transport chain, and there's all these gradients that, things move across with sodium, potassium pumps, and everything's about the electrical charge. And so we are an electrical body, and we need to be outside. The funny thing is, we think it's weird to be outside getting sun out in the grass, with our shirt off or whatever. We're meant to have clothes. We're meant to have sneakers on. We're meant to be on a rug. We're meant to be in a box. We're meant to be underneath this fluorescent light and getting blue light until 2 in the morning. And we're meant to be watching like shows that really ramp us up, like Game of Thrones at 10 o'clock at night, and getting blue light blasted in our eyes. This is all natural. Eating our ultra processed food, like this is all natural. It's so weird to go outside and be an animal. That's what we fucking are. Like we're meant to be out with each other, connecting with each other in the sun, in the fresh air, in the grass, drinking, water that has some charge and life to it. I mean, all these things like eating natural food, like it's, getting natural sunlight that sets our circadian rhythm. And when it's dark, we're supposed to be going to bed. But we're like, I mean, that's a whole other thing, like Dr. Sachin Panda's data on like circadian rhythm. Like we're totally bucking all that too. It's absurd. Like what we're calling natural or what they've programmed us to believe that's natural. And it's completely opposite.
Or even calling it healthy. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Healthy. It's the right thing to do if you do all these things we tell you. And I'm thinking, okay, there's lots of other things you can be telling people that are healthy, actually healthy. Yeah, I live by myself, Shawn, and so in my backyard I have a privacy fence, 14 backyard chickens, and a big old yard. And so I'll get out there, don't laugh, completely naked, let the sun hit me, so I get all that vitamin D production and all, and then while I'm barefoot in the grass, getting that grounding, probably stepping in some chicken poo, getting a little few bugs there. But I mean, like that's beautiful, and yet not even on the radar screen of the vast majority of people.
Do you see all these other animals getting all these other disease issues or viruses, or I mean, they are super resilient because they're out there living their lives, getting all kinds of bugs and, the good things from outdoors and the quote unquote bad things that are making them stronger. And we're inside pretending to not be animals, but it's like we're ironically like one giant lab experiment.
Of the worst kind. Like this is worse than Frankenstein.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there's no precedence for this. This is a bizarre time in human history, like that we're getting exposed to so many weird chemicals that we're not, going along with our circadian rhythm, that we're, and with those chemicals, these drugs, these vaccines, these things that have no history in our in millennia of life. They're like, hey, we invented something. You try it. You be the guinea pig. Like, okay.
For example, 5G.
Yeah, exactly. Like is it as terrible or evil as people say? I don't know. But here's the thing. Does it penetrate? I mean, think about this. Think about if you're in a brick and steel building in a steel elevator and you're getting your call. What do you think is going on? Do you think it's penetrating your bones and flesh?
Has to.
100%. And I just told you, like, we're the body electric, and like we have these cells that get affected by radiation from the sun, which is a good thing. Like most low level radiation is a good thing. That blue light turns on our circadian rhythm. The sun and those infrared, helps heal us. The far and near infrared that we were talking about, all that radiation is actually a good thing, the cosmic radiation. But this level of radiation, is it a good thing? I mean, I would say no, but I don't know what the actual research is because they bury it all, they make it all confusing. And again, I'm sure that's done intentionally, but it is frustrating that we don't know if what the real impact of this is. And 5G, by the way, if you really read about it, it's not they didn't put it out there so that we just have a faster 4G so that you can pull up stuff on your cell phone a little faster. 5G and 6G and things beyond is about powering the Internet of Things, IoT. And it's basically they want everything in our world to be internet connected and wireless to it. Your cars, your refrigerators, your microwaves, everything. And in China, where they have cameras for every person, they have about 1 billion cameras, that it involves surveillance and that police state. But it also involves you could literally walk outside in China without a phone and say Uber, because there's so many microphones, so many cameras, there's so much 5G that you can get it. So it's about, being an ultra connected world, but that also means an ultra controlling, ultra all seeing world too, which, that's where we're heading.
And if you let your conspiracy theory brain go down that path, it can lead you to a very deep, dark pit of depression, which I want to end on this, the last topic. I think COVID-19 itself is not the real pandemic. The real pandemic is the coming mental health breakdown crisis. When I read the statistic that 1 in 4 teenagers are trying to kill themselves this year because of the isolation, because of the lack of all the things we've been talking about here, and then just people being isolated from other people. We weren't intended as human beings to be separate from one another. We are very social by design. So did they not take into account the collateral damage of all of that?
Well, and I just watched the documentary Social Dilemma on Netflix, and they actually talk a lot about that, about the kids cutting and committing suicide and the rate of depression and how that's just quadrupled because of social media and their exposure to it. And they're not meant to judge themselves and just be so harsh to themselves as they are now. And they're certainly harsh to each other. And then you're right. And then they're further isolated and they lack the social skills. And, they also talked about how they showed this graph, like how there used to be this middle ground where a lot of people were centrist. Yes, some people were left and right wing and whatever, but most of the country had this kind of middle ground and they were centrist. But they showed the graph and it's moving, moving. And now we're extreme because Fox News is this and MSNBC is that. And there's no more I'll meet you in the middle and they also talked about this, that on your Facebook feed, you're getting confirmation bias. You're getting all the opinions you need. So you see the other side. The other side is idiots. They don't see the truth. And then the other side saying the other side are idiots. They don't see the truth because their whole feed is filled up with confirmation bias because Facebook has algorithms to make you want to scroll more and make you believe that everyone thinks like you. And they put those posts higher up in your feed so that you get the confirmation. And you're like, yes, I'm right. This is right. And what it does is it just literally is pulling us apart. And then you add this pandemic thing. Everyone wonders why things are so polarizing and political. I mean, think about it. It's being fed by our TVs and by social media, and they're fanning these flames. And the one thing that we can do is say, unplug from all of that, get outside and just hug each other and enjoy each other's company and connect as real people. I mean, there was an experiment once where they took people that were, again, hardcore, right wing, left wing, and they changed their feeds to the opposite. And for a month, they had to look at it. And there was a radical change in acceptance and tolerance of different views because they were just looking at that. And because we're humans, like what's like, if you think about all the wars we fought, how many times like they give all these slurs, I won't say all of them, but there's slurs to whoever our enemy is because it dehumanizes them. When you think about all these people all around the world, that's one of the things I love about traveling is they're just people trying to survive like you. They have families like you. They want to just make it through the day and be healthy like you. They want to be loved like you. No matter who they are, where they are, what religion they are, what country they are. And we're losing sight of that. It's so weird to be ultra connected, quote unquote, but then just be so far apart.
Oh man, I just recently read on my show, Jimmy Rants, Facebook is actually doing a study between now and the election where they're paying people to either get off of social media altogether, that's one group, or to target them with a specific message. So what you were talking about, flipping the script on what that confirmation bias is and showing you the opposite to see if it influences how you feel about who you would vote for. It's interesting. I don't know what their intentions are with that, but I guess it will be interesting data. It's supposed to come out middle of next year when they come out with it. But the mental health breakdown, it saddens my heart. You've been through depression. I'm generally a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Despite my trauma in the past, I've never allowed myself to get into that deep, dark pit. But I know a lot of people who do, and they were already teetering before 2020, before COVID, before the race relations, before the presidential election, and never mind, people still had stuff in their life going on and still do. I worry about that, Shawn, in the years to come. The mental health profession is going to be overrun.
Yeah, and I think what I'm saying for me and my depression to try and put the right people around you. If these polarizing news shows and these clickbait articles and social media are trying to enrage you, flare you up, separate you, then try and put the right people around you that do have positive voices, that are loving voices, that are mentors, first off. And then I've been doing plant medicine journeys recently, and that's been super helpful for me. I don't know where everyone would stand on that, but it's something to look into because, man, if you can lift the ego off you and you can just feel that love, it becomes like a guidepost that you can go back to. It's like, I know what love feels like now because for a lot of us, I went largely my life without feeling that. And so I didn't know what it was. I knew that I like something. I knew that someone's nice to me. I like that, but I didn't know what like true love feels like. And to go through it on some of these journeys is super helpful for me. And then I've been doing like other deep work. I've been talking to a therapist, and that's been transformational. She does that Byron Katie style work. It's called thework.com. You can go check it out. But my therapist like helps me, work through the trauma, reframe the trauma, and then I put it away. And once you reframe it and you see like it wasn't exactly like you saw it, it wasn't the agreement you gave it, like in the four agreements, like we make all these agreements with ourselves as we go on in life. We let people project out on us and accept it as truth. So, like, just doing some of these things is so helpful. And yes, getting outside, having a pet, like, whatever. I mean, right now is a time that for me, it turns out like this year has been the best year of my life. Like, I've had so many shifts. So it kind of bums me out when I hear some people say, like, this has been a horrible year. I'm struggling because this is your chance to really go deep on yourself, do some deep self work, and find out who your true friends are and connect with
Oh,
them, and to
oh,
get outside and to not like spend your life in a car commuting. And it's been a nice reset button. I know there's been some strains and stresses, but you should appreciate what you truly have, and I think it's a blessing for many of us.
Oh my gosh. Like, I've lost so many friends this year, Shawn, but I picked up new ones
Yeah.
that I know are a lot more authentic, are
Yeah.
true to who I want as a friend. And I'm like, good riddance. Like, I
Yep.
didn't need you in my life if all you were doing was weighing me down.
Yeah, I have a friend, this gets a little woo, maybe, but in my plant medicine space, he talks about right now there's a bifurcation that's happening in culture, that some people are kind of going that fear route, whether it's mask or anti-mask, Trump, anti-Trump, like, Black Lives Matter, anti-Black, whatever it is, like there's a lot of fear that's going on and anxiety. And this other path is just kind of like a path of peace and enlightenment. And this shift is because of COVID, and like people are going deeper in friendships on this other path. People are, you know, doing that deep self work, like the therapy, and they're going back to nature, and they're finding peace, and now they're pursuing their passion because they got fired from their job, and they're like, screw it, I'm going to go, pursue this passion I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Or, they're finding the loved one that they never thought they'd find because of so much happening right now. And I think it's a time that you can embrace fear or abundance. And I'm definitely going to choose the latter.
I'm excited to watch the innovation that's going to come out of the people that were forced into a situation to either wallow in their pity or chase their dreams. And that sounds familiar, Shawn.
It does. It does. But and that's true. Like, there's people just like that doctor for me, a seemingly random person right
Yeah.
now, be that person.
Yes.
There's so many people that are hurting around you, and someone like me might kill themselves today. And I'm trying to bring a lot of awareness to this right now in my social media, because I've been very close to it several times, and someone might take their life today, and what you say to them can make all the difference. So be the difference maker instead of spreading fear, instead of driving that wedge between you. Look at the commonalities and give someone love and say, I love you, brother. Like, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, have an awesome day. I'm here for you. Whatever it is, support them, and just be loving, man. Just be
Good
loving.
old good old fashioned be kind to other people. Uh, like I remember growing up in church, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. I'm like, what happened to that? It's so gone now.
And now it feels more like do unto others before they can do it to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's like preemptive
Well,
hatefulness.
I'm not letting the hate change me. I've been online over 15 years and I've gotten some ugly things because I don't look the part of a health person. I don't care. I know I have good knowledge and I bring good people on my shows. So I'm very confident and happy with myself. I don't need the judgment of other people and I don't really let it bother me that much anymore. But Shawn, you were amazing today. Shawn Wells, you guys, ingredientologist. Go look him up over on Instagram. He's pretty darn active there, 42 plus thousand people and counting. And man, you are amazing. Do you podcast or video or do anything like that?
I just do tons of podcasts, but my goal is by the end of the year starting one up. And I do have a book that's coming out called The Energy Formula at the end of the year. That'll be all on biohacking, that includes keto and includes this mindset stuff.
Yeah.
So, all of it's from my learnings. I've been sick. I've been depressed. I've been suicidal. I've been morbidly obese. Like I've been down this road. So I'm not just someone who's, barking things that I don't understand. Like hopefully, you feel the empathy from my perspective. But it was awesome to be on your show, Jimmy. You're an awesome dude. This is a huge honor.
Thank you kindly, sir. We'll get you back on in 2021 when your book comes out.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Have a great